What would you do if 200 warriors stood outside your fence at sunrise, all staring straight at you without blinking once? Most men would run. Most men would pray. Malachi Brooks just stood there in his cabin doorway, gripping a cold coffee cup while fear crawled up his spine like ice. He was a simple rancher, a quiet man, and still a virgin at 24. He had never been close to any woman, not even long enough to know what love or affection felt like. Yet somehow, he had become the center of a storm that he never saw coming. A storm that began with nothing more than a jacket and a stranger's tired smile. The morning sun lit the warriors' painted faces, turning their sharp features into something carved from stone. They lined the entire length of his fence, shoulder to shoulder, bows resting at their sides, spears pointed down. They were not here for war. They were not here in peace. They were simply here for him. And that truth filled the small ranch house with a fear so heavy Malachi felt it in his chest. He tried to calm himself by remembering how this all began. Just yesterday, the sky had turned dark with a sudden storm. Rain fell hard and cold, the kind that soaked a man to his bones in seconds. Malachi had been outside the barn checking on his horses when he spotted movement through the sheets of rain. A woman walked slowly across the open ground, her steps unsteady. Her long, black hair clung to her soaked buckskin dress. She moved like someone who had been walking for hours, someone who was cold, hungry, and holding on by sheer will. He did not think. He simply ran toward her, splashing through mud and calling out over the thunder. "Ma'am, you need shelter." She had turned to look at him with eyes dark as night. They showed fear, but not fear of him. She kept glancing over her shoulder toward the trees as if something out there was chasing her. "I cannot stay," she said softly, almost lost under the storm. "My people will worry." Lightning flashed, revealing how badly she was shaking. Malachi's mother had raised him to help anyone in need, no matter who they were or where they came from. So he removed his coat, the heavy wool jacket his father left him before passing away, and placed it around her shoulders. The moment she felt its warmth, her expression changed. She looked down at the jacket as if it was more than clothing. Then she lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes in a way that made his heart beat faster. "You would give this to me?" she asked. "Just until the storm passes," Malachi said. "You're freezing." She pulled the jacket tight, and for a moment they stood quietly in the rain, two strangers facing a storm together. Then she smiled, not a shy smile, not a cold smile, a warm, sincere one that made Malachi forget his own name for a moment. "My name is Ayanna," she said. "Malachi Brooks," he replied, feeling his face heat under the rain. "I will remember this kindness, Malachi Brooks," she said. Then she turned and walked back into the storm. He tried to offer her the cabin again, but she disappeared into the trees before he could speak. Malachi went to bed that night wondering if she was safe, but he never imagined what her disappearance meant. Now, standing in his cabin doorway with 200 warriors watching him, he feared the worst. The sun climbed higher, but the warriors remained still. Not one man stepped forward. Not one horse moved. Malachi felt their eyes on him as he fed the chickens, checked the barn, and tried to pretend everything was normal. But nothing was normal about 200 warriors surrounding a simple ranch. By late morning, more were arriving. Small groups rode over the hills, joining the line until nearly 300 warriors stood shoulder to shoulder around his property. They looked like an army, preparing for battle, yet none had lifted their weapons. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Around noon, one man broke away from the line. He rode forward slowly before dismounting in front of Malachi's porch. He wore a tall feathered headdress. His face was calm, unreadable. Malachi's breath caught. This was a chief. "I am Takakota," the man said in perfect English, "chief of the Lakota band that travels these lands." Malachi swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. We have come about the woman." Malachi froze. What woman? Quote, "The one you sheltered during the storm, the one who now wears your jacket." Malachi felt the world tilt under him. "I was just trying to help," he said. She was cold. Takakota studied him with eyes sharp as a hawk's. "Do you know who she is?" Quote, "She said her name was Ayana." That was all. Takakota nodded once. "She is my daughter." The words struck Malachi like a punch. Ayana was a chief's daughter. And he had touched her, spoken to her, placed his father's jacket around her shoulders. "Sir, I meant no disrespect," Malachi stammered. "I didn't know." Takakota raised a hand. "My daughter left our camp 2 days ago to gather herbs. She should have returned before the storm. She did not. Your jacket was found near the river this morning, but she was not with it." Malachi felt his blood run cold. "You think something happened to her?" he whispered. Takakota stepped closer. "You were the last man to see her alive." The air shifted. The warriors tensed, watching Malachi with new eyes. "I did nothing to her," Malachi said quickly. "I swear it." Quote, the chief's voice softened just enough to reveal something beneath the anger. "There is one way to prove your innocence," he said. Malachi's heart pounded. "What must I do?" Takakota looked toward the distant hills. "You will help us find my daughter." Before Malachi could respond, the chief added something that made his stomach twist. "And pray that she is still alive." Malachi saddled his horse with shaking hands. The chief's words echoed in his mind again and again. He had to help find Ayana. If she was hurt or trapped somewhere, every minute counted. The warriors waited in complete silence while he tied down his saddlebags and checked the cinch. Their eyes followed his every move. Some looked suspicious. Some looked angry. A few looked almost curious. But they all believed one thing. Malachi Brooks was the last man to see their chief's daughter alive. Takakota climbed onto his horse and motioned for Malachi to ride beside him. 50 warriors broke away from the fence line to join them. The rest stayed behind to guard the ranch, but Malachi had the uneasy feeling they were not guarding the land. They were guarding him. The trail began at the exact spot where Malachi had seen Ayana disappear into the storm the night before. Takakota dismounted and examined the ground carefully. Malachi stood nearby, trying to see what the chief saw, but the ground looked like nothing more than wet dirt to him. "She went this way," Takakota said. Her steps were slow. She was tired. Malachi remembered how Ayana looked, exhausted, shaking, eyes full of fear that did not belong to the storm. "Was someone following her?" Malachi asked. Takakota nodded and pointed to the ground. Large boot tracks behind hers. A man. Malachi felt his stomach twist. She had been running from someone who chased her through the storm. They followed the trail through scrub brush and low hills. The land stretched wide and rugged, the kind of place where a person could disappear easily. Warriors rode on every side, watching the trees, the rocks, and each other. Malachi noticed something strange. They were not just watching for danger, they were watching their own men, as if danger could come from within the group. "Why would someone take your daughter?" Malachi asked quietly. Takakota's jaw tightened. "Power, revenge." "Both." As they rounded a bend, the chief pointed toward a large rock. "Blood," he said. The sight made Malachi's breath catch. Small, dark stains marked the stone. Not enough to kill someone, but enough to weaken them. "Ayana was injured," Takakota said. "She was pushed or she fell." A warrior nearby spoke up. "Chief, we should split into groups. Each trail gets a search party." Malachi turned to look at him. The man's voice was steady, but his eyes were restless. He kept shifting in his saddle. Something about him felt wrong. Takakota answered calmly. "No, we stay together." "But, Chief." "We stay together," Takakota said again, his tone firm. "Whoever took my daughter wants us divided." The warrior fell silent, though he looked frustrated. Malachi leaned closer to Takakota. "Is he one of the 3 men who wanted to court her?" he whispered. "Yes," the chief replied. "His name is Kitchi." Malachi's heart beat faster. The tension in the group grew thicker with every mile. The deeper they traveled, the more Malachi felt the danger shifting around them like wind. They followed the trail toward a river swollen by the storm. The bank was muddy and torn up, making tracking difficult. Takakota knelt and studied the ground again. "She crossed here," he announced, "but not alone." "How can you tell?" Malachi asked. "Her steps are uneven." She was forced to move quickly. Malachi imagined Ayana limping through the mud, pushed by someone stronger than her. The image made his chest tighten. "Chief," Kitchi called from upstream, "I found something." Everyone rode to him. Hanging from a low branch was a torn piece of cloth. Malachi's heart stopped. His jacket. The same wool coat he had given Ayana during the storm. Takakota carefully lifted it down. The coat was tied neatly, not caught by accident. "She left it as a sign," the chief said. "She wanted us to know we are on the right path." But there was more. Malachi noticed a small piece of bark tucked into the pocket. "Chief," he said softly, "there's a message." Takakota pulled out the bark. Strange symbols had been carved into the surface. Malachi could not read them, but Takakota's face grew pale. "What does it say?" Malachi asked. "The daughter pays for the father's crimes," Takakota said. "Sunset tomorrow, or she dies." The words hit Malachi like a punch. This was not random. Someone was targeting the chief through his daughter. "What crimes?" Malachi asked. Takakota stared at the river, his eyes dark and troubled. "A man from another band believes I wronged him. His name is Akacheta. I defeated him in combat last winter. He swore revenge." "You think he took Ayana?" "Yes. But he had help. Someone told him when she would be alone." Malachi felt a chill, betrayal, inside the tribe. "Someone riding with us?" he asked. Takakota nodded. "One of them knows more than he should." Before Malachi could speak, they entered a narrow canyon. The walls rose high on both sides, turning the sunlight into thin shadows. That was when an arrow whistled past Malachi's ear. More arrows rained from above. War cries echoed through the canyon. Horses reared. Warriors shouted. Takakota's men scattered for cover. "Ambush!" someone yelled. Malachi ducked behind a rock, heart pounding. But then he saw something that made his blood freeze. Kitchi was not taking cover. He was signaling to the attackers. Takakota saw it too. He raised his bow, fired, and struck Kitchi in the shoulder. The traitor fell hard to the ground. Warriors charged, fighting the ambushers in a fierce battle. Amid the chaos, Malachi spotted something high on the canyon wall. A flash of buckskin. A figure tied to a large rock. "Ayana! She's up there!" Malachi shouted. Takakota fired another arrow and shouted orders, but the canyon climb was too exposed. Arrows flew everywhere. "I'm going!" Malachi yelled, already scrambling up the rocky wall. The climb was brutal. His hands scraped. His arms trembled. But he kept moving. He had to reach her. He had to save her. When he reached the ledge, Ayana was there, bound, gagged, frightened, but alive. Her eyes filled with relief when she saw him. He cut her free. She gripped his arm. "Malachi," she whispered, "Kitchi betrayed us. Akacheta wants my father to step down. They will kill him and anyone who stands with him." "We're getting you out," Malachi said. She pointed to a hidden path behind the rocks. "Follow me, quiet." They moved fast, climbing down the secret route. When they reached the canyon floor behind the attackers, Ayana grabbed Malachi's rifle. "Can you use it?" he asked. "Yes," she said firmly. She fired one clean shot. Akacheta dropped, wounded. His men froze. Takakota's warriors charged and overwhelmed them. The battle ended in minutes. Ayana was safe. Kitchi and the other traitors were captured. Takakota walked toward Malachi and Ayana with a look of deep respect. "You climbed to save my daughter," the chief said. "You showed courage when many others did not." Malachi felt breathless, exhausted, and stunned. 3 days ago, he was just a quiet rancher. Now he had saved a chief's daughter. Takakota placed a hand on Malachi's shoulder. "Ride with us. We go home together." As they rode out of the canyon, the sun lit the sky in gold. Ayanna wore his jacket again, holding it close to her chest. Malachi realized everything had changed. The ride back toward the open plains felt different from the tense journey out. Ayanna rode beside Malachi now, close enough that he could hear her quiet breaths and see the dried mud on her face. She held herself tall despite everything she had endured. Her father rode on her other side, silent but alert. Every few minutes he glanced at her as if to reassure himself she was really there, safe and alive. Behind them, the captured traders rode with their hands tied. Kitchi kept his eyes on the ground, refusing to look at anyone. Two other warriors suspected of helping Akacheta stayed quiet as well. Their betrayal had shaken the tribe deeply, and Malachi could feel the tension running through the group like a wire pulled too tight. The sun climbed higher until it hung bright over the land. The storm that had brought Ayanna to Malachi's ranch was long gone now, replaced with clear skies and dry wind. It felt strange that such a simple moment, giving a jacket to a cold stranger, could lead to all of this. When they reached the wide, grassy stretch near Malachi's ranch, dozens of warriors rode out to meet them. Their faces changed the moment they saw Ayanna alive. Men who had stood stone still and unreadable that morning now shouted with relief. Some lifted their hands to the sky. Others rode toward Takakota and bowed their heads with respect. Ayanna smiled softly at their reaction. It was the first real smile Malachi had seen from her since the storm. As they approached his fence line, the rest of the tribe gathered around, creating a circle of riders. Malachi felt suddenly out of place again. He was just one man among hundreds. A single rancher who barely understood their customs. Yet he was standing at the center of something important, something that went far beyond him. Takakota stepped down from his horse and motioned for the prisoners to be brought forward. The traders were placed in front of the entire tribe. Warriors gathered in a wide circle, watching their chief with silent respect. Kitchi lifted his head. His expression was twisted with anger and fear. "Chief," he said, "I only." "Enough," Takakota said. His voice was steady but full of disappointment. "You betrayed your own people. You worked with a man who wished to destroy our band and harm my daughter." Kitchi's eyes darted toward Ayanna, then toward Malachi. "She chose him over us, over me. You would have done the same." A cold wind swept across the grass. Malachi felt Ayanna tense beside him. Takakota stepped closer to Kitchi. "My daughter owes you nothing. Her heart is her own. You chose jealousy over honor. You chose pride over loyalty." Kitchi swallowed hard, but his eyes were full of bitterness. The chief raised his arm. Two strong warriors moved forward and took the traders away for judgment. Takakota watched them go, his shoulders heavy with sadness rather than anger. It was clear he cared for his people, even those who failed him. When the crowd began to disperse, Takakota turned to Malachi. "You saved my daughter. Twice," he said. "First with kindness, then with courage." Malachi shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Takakota said. "Very few men would have climbed that canyon. Very few men would act when fear tried to stop them." Ayanna stepped forward then. She removed the jacket from her shoulders and held it out to Malachi. He hesitated, unsure if it was proper to take it. "You should have this back," she said gently. "It is special to you." Malachi shook his head. "It kept you warm when you needed it. That makes it worth more now than it ever was to me." Ayanna looked down at the jacket, holding it as if it were something precious. When she lifted her eyes again, they were soft and full of warmth. "Then I will keep it," she said, "and I will remember what it meant." The rest of the tribe began preparing to leave. Warriors mounted their horses. The chief spoke to his men in a firm, steady voice. Plans were made to return home and inform the elders of all that had happened. But Takakota remained standing in front of Malachi. "You are welcome in our camp any time," the chief said. "A man who helps my family becomes part of my family." Malachi felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. For the first time since his parents died, he felt seen, valued, not just a lonely rancher on the edge of nowhere. As the tribe prepared to leave, Ayanna walked up to him once more. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Malachi felt his heart thump against his ribs. "If you want to," he said. Ayanna smiled in a way that made the whole world feel softer. "I do." She mounted her horse and joined her father, but for a long moment she looked back at Malachi, her jacket wrapped snug around her. It was clear she meant every word. Malachi stood by his fence as the long line of riders moved across the plains like a river of color and strength. The morning sunlight lit Ayanna's figure at the front of the group. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked free. When the last warrior disappeared over the ridge, the ranch fell quiet again. But it was not the same quiet as before. Something warm lingered in the air. Something hopeful. Malachi Brooks, the lonely young rancher who thought he had nothing to offer, had earned the respect of an entire tribe. He had saved a chief's daughter. And he had found something he never expected on a stormy night, a beginning. When he returned to his cabin, he touched the spot where the jacket usually hung, his father's old coat, the one he had given away without a second thought. He smiled softly. It was in better hands now. And so was he.